I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is March 9th, 2023, and this is the Town of Southington Board of Finance meeting. Tonight's a very simple meeting to host a public hearing, and that's what we're going to be doing tonight. So we're going to have a public hearing, and the reason why we have to do it is so that the budget's already been presented to us. We could not add anything to the budget. In order to add anything to the budget, you have to have a public hearing to do that, so the public have a chance to opine on it in a noticed meeting. So we have that. And then after we have the public hearing, there'll be two motions to put on the MERS, the Municipal Employee Retirement System, the Defined Benefit Pension Plan. The state asked every MERS municipality that they had to contribute more to it than expected. And we've been notified, right? We've been notified officially? No, we're still working off of a estimate.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
we'll talk about
it normally would be this week, but there's going to be a meeting with the MERS towns and the Comptroller's office on Monday, and the Comptroller is going to send out the letters as soon as that meeting's over, so we'll get next week.
Okay. So the number may move, or we think this is the number?
I think this. I believe this is going to be the number.
I just make sure, because we're having a formal meeting, that we stand for the pledge, and then we'll open up a public hearing. So before this seems like I'll just keep it closer. So before we have the public hearing, I'd just like to have the town manager, finance director, whoever wants to speak, explain this issue that's before us, and then we'll move into a public hearing where the public can speak, and then we'll move into the motions we have to make.
I'll start off, and of course Jennifer and Jim will go next. As you mentioned, the charter requires that we hold this public hearing and request of both the Board of Education budget and the town manager's budget that we ask for it to be amended in an upward direction. Obviously, cuts can be made by this board anytime, but to add something to my budget or to the Board of Education budget requires this public hearing. We mentioned correctly, it is on the MERS system. So let me first start with Jennifer to talk about what's necessary for the Board of Education budget, and then Jim will talk about what's
I want to do the roll call, or we'll do the roll call after. Go ahead,
okay,
and we'll do a roll call before the vote.
Good evening, Board of Finance members. I'm here tonight to request an additional $235,000 for the Board of Education's proposed operating budget for the 23-24 year. As mentioned, these funds are requested to fund a higher than anticipated employer contribution of the Board of Ed employees covered by the Municipal Employee Retirement System, or MERS. And it should be noted that the teacher's retirement is not part of the MERS system. They fall under TRB. So in December, that's when we're putting our budget together. Our administration looks at that time to the actuarial report that's published on the Office of the State Controller's office on the state website. The actuary report available in December is for the previous year, so fiscal year end 21. At that time, the Board of Ed follows the rates for the general employees with Social Security, which the actuary report showed a rate of 17.55 for fiscal 23, along with expected rates for fiscal 24 of 18.02 and fiscal 25 rates of 17.57. Based on the 18.02, the Board of Ed assumed a slight increase to that rate and calculated our MERS employer contribution using 18.22% on the portion of our payroll that's applicable to MERS. For fiscal 24, the MERS employer contribution was calculated at $3,048,599. Early and late February or early March each year, the new report is released with the updated contribution rates. This year, the updated report showed an increase to the employer's contribution from the expected 18.02 to 19.57 for the general employees with Social Security category. that will add an extra $235,000 to our employer contribution. It should also be noted that these letters from MERS each year detail what the employee contribution is, and that employee contribution has increased from 2.25% in year 19 up to 4.25% in the current year of 23. We won't know the new employee contribution until we get the letters, as Mr. Shota said, next week. And as he stated, the state does recognize that this is unexpected to the towns and Board of Ed, and they have scheduled a virtual town hall meeting on Monday to discuss the rate increase and hopefully discuss long-term fixes for the system. And we can provide more information at that time. Thank you for considering our request increase of $235,000 for a total proposed budget of $112,010,884.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The process on the general government side is exactly the same as what Jennifer described on the school boards, but there's two components that are very different. We have three categories of employees who are in the MERS plan. General government employees such as myself, Jennifer, and what Jennifer said is exactly what happened on the general government side. There's no a change in the way the state of Connecticut does that work. The biggest contributors to, I think, this issue, from what the evidence that I've seen so far, is the very large increase, not only in the general government type of employees that went from 17.55%, like Jennifer said, up to, 19 and change, when we were led to believe in the past couple of years it would be something like 8.02 to 18.22 or something like that, which is where I budgeted. But I also extrapolated that into the police and to the fire. Now, the police and the fire have a different actuarial calculation because they have a shorter work span before they earn their full accrual of pension benefits. So, similar to if you have a police officer or a firefighter who starts at age, 25, 26, 23 and out most of the time, so you're talking someone who's 48, 49 years old who's going to actuarially live another 30 years, 79-ish, give or take. So the increases for police and fire employees who are in MERS municipalities have risen from this year 24.82% for police who are not in Social Security, because our police officers are not in Social Security, to the rate of 29.92%, close to 30% of every eligible dollar that is MERSable, we call it, is going to be owed by the town to the state comptroller's office. The firefighters, along the similar line, the adjustment wasn't as bad, but it was 23.11% payroll this current year versus 25.69% is what ultimately is coming from the actuarial report that Jennifer mentioned. And, of course, the general government is from 17.55 to 19.57. So that that calculation on my end drove our my computation up to approximately $5.9 million needed for MERS next fiscal year versus the $5.3 million that we had calculated previously based upon the prior expectations. So that, therefore, we, through the town manager and or excuse me, and or I are asking for an adjustment to the MERS line item upward by $605,000. Of course, the amount is much larger due to the fact that almost all of our employees are in the MERS plan. Unlike what Jennifer says, the Connecticut Teachers Retirement System handles teachers and all certified folks in the school system. The MERS plan obviously does not. So that's where we are right now, awaiting more information, more formal information from the state comptroller's office. And which hopefully will come Monday, maybe Tuesday by the time it's looked at and analyzed. I can't make any promises. But at least there is still time in our budget process to make any necessary adjustments. So with that, I'll stop talking. This is a public hearing, and let anybody who wants to ask.
And when you put that in the budget, you'll flow it all the way down to the mill rate, and you have to add the 1.9% uncollectible, right?
Yeah, I will
down.
flow that back. Just off a calculation that I had done, I think that the town manager asked me to do was it's like another 0.18 mils or something like that if they were both approved. So instead of the 1.75 mil increase, it would be a 1.93 mil rate increase.
Okay, I'd like to do a roll call first, test for a quorum, and then move into the public hearing so everything's documented.
Sure, Mr. Badoin.
Here.
Mr. Morrison.
Here.
Mrs. Zoni.
Here.
Mr. Pocock Jr. Mr. Lebenik.
Here.
And Mr. Chairman Leary.
Here.
All present.
All present. Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing to anybody who'd like to speak on it. We'll now open the public hearing. All of our meetings, everybody knows, are transparent meetings. Public is invited. The town's business cannot be done in private. That's why we have public hearings. So if anybody would like to speak, please, microphone is yours. Okay. Opening it up and seeing no speakers, hearing no speakers, we will close the public hearing, and then we'll move for two agenda items. The first is I'll seek a motion from someone to increase the town manager's budget for the 2023-2024 year on the line for general fund MERS pension by $605,000.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, we're going to
Do a
roll call vote.
It's just,
Oh,
sorry,
please.
it's a question. Question is why? What's driving this change? Did you get any guidance on that at all?
I did have a chance to talk to the chief administrator. He was very open with me, but he felt a couple major issues. The first one was the expectations for the assets was one, and then the 6% increase that the MERS retirees received. I believe it was in July. Those two things were a driving factor. He talked about some of the other aspects of it. I did explain to him, and he was very, very understanding that I thought if next year, if we can get this information from the actuary in January, that would help out all the MERS towns. And I wasn't the first person to ask him that. So he felt that next year that they would work very tirelessly to get the information to us at the January meeting, because it has to be voted on at the January meeting. The actuaries would do that. He did say they would take the town to get the information to the state also to make sure it works out. So I'm sure that all the MERS towns will be very happy to get to the state as quickly as possible if they know they can get it in January.
So the assets an increase is
Right. MERS has a floor and a ceiling. 2.5 is the floor, 6 is the ceiling.
and the return on the assets is, I assume,
That's
Stock market driven.
Yeah, it's a little
driven.
above my head because I don't know what the investments are, but
all right.
yeah, but obviously they're conservative investments like the town. They're not going to
Yeah.
invest wildly in the stock market, but
it's going to be
yeah.
bonds and stuff.
I would assume it's bonds, et cetera, et cetera.
The thing about the MERS plan is it's a well-funded plan. So if you think of the pension plans that the state administers as 3 columns, one for your state employees, one for your teachers and certified school folks, and the third for the MERS. We all know that the underfunding of the Connecticut Teachers Retirement System and the state employees retirement system is in the tens of billions of dollars, maybe
67
more.
billion.
I know the current administration has done some work to put some surplus funds in there and hopefully stop some of that bloodletting. But the MERS, if you're a MERS municipality, a municipal member, you have no choice. You get that letter that usually, like Mark said, it's usually here by now, and it says what your rates are. you have to conform, and you have to get them, the money on every time a payroll is run. And if not, the answer is simple. They basically throw you out of the plan. Then they got to, generate a pension plan all by yourself. So it's a little bit different than the Connecticut Teachers Retirement and the
Right. But usually the
state employees.
Tony, microphone.
Oh, sorry. But usually a pension plan is driven, is over decades, right? So why didn't the state sort of bring this in gradually over time, which is usually what people do? Why is it woof like that at a time when municipalities can't afford it? I mean, let's be real. Why didn't they do that? Is there...
Well, I think those are some of the questions will be asked on Monday, because the state did do it when they did the I think it's called the return rate. The state used to have for MERS, they had a return rate, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, at 8, and they reduced it. Jennifer, you would know, they reduced it down to 7, and eventually they want to reduce it lower than that. But when they reduced it, that's a huge chunk, that's a huge amount of money, and they did it over a 4 or 5 year plan.
Yeah.
And the legislature, for the first time in my memory, actually opened up the MERS statute to increase the employee share. It was 2.25 or 2.35 for as long as I can remember, and over a 4-year period, it went from, as Jennifer said, 2.35 to 4.25. That can't be done through the MERS system. That's got to be done through the legislature. Whereas what the town's percentage is not done through the legislature. It's done through the MERS system. It's based strictly upon actuarial table.
I know with the defined benefit pension plans never go the other way. So once a company or an employer funds them, they never turn around and say, boy, we're overfunded. Plan assets are higher than expected. Let me do a refund. It only works one way. They just hold it in the plan.
We did have a couple of years that we were flat. I do remember having some years that we were flat, going back 8 or 9 years, 10 years, or whatever.
Probably because maybe if the assets were high, they'd say, okay, you don't have to contribute any more. So they soften it on one side, but not the other. But that's the nature of I think I said this before, the defined benefit pension plan, the risk is solely on the employer, in our case, the town. And when you look at the other types of programs, the 403Bs and 401Ks, the risk is solely on the employee.
And I was asked the question, it's important.
Just where the risk is.
I was asked a question by a couple of residents called me up, and it's important for the public to know. When it comes to MERS, and it's statutory, the town's been involved in MERS since the 50s. That being said, a couple of questions to me were, well, why don't we do in the collective bargaining agreement, why don't we have new employees go into a 401K and continue on with the current employees? The statute specifically does not allow that. It says that Southington employees are either in MERS or out of MERS. The Attorney General has backed that position up, and in fact, there are cases where towns have done that and had to go back and put money into MERS to get them back in. So that was a question. The people were they did not know that. So that was one of the things they said. They said, why wasn't the town planning ahead and getting the new employees out of MERS? Well, that's not a possibility.
Which is what a lot of corporations did. They sunset their plans,
Yeah.
grandfathered everybody in at certain tiers based on age and service years, and then they introduced the defined contribution plans.
Is that something the town can look at? Not now, obviously, but in the sense of, can you cash out of the MERS of, the stuff that employees have paid in? And can you cash out, like I think all of us in private industry did, you cashed out of the defined benefit and you added it to your 401K and off you went.
That could only be done through the collective bargaining.
Oh, yeah.
The town can't unilaterally do that.
Yeah.
Well, each union would have to agree, and perfectly blunt, that's not something that the union's going to line up to agree.
That's questions that the public have asked, though.
Yeah.
The public is asking those questions. Okay, is there any more discussion?
Well, just if I may, Mr. Chairman, part of this, Southington, there's about maybe 20, 25 of us towns in Connecticut that I would call our more early budget type of, early in the calendar budget dates due. The town manager's budget is due to you folks by February 18th per the charter. I know many of my peers that I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks since this has really become better known, they're not even, the chief executive hasn't even, whether it's a mayor or a first selectman or a city manager type, has not even had to present his budget to either a finance committee or a full town council or a board of finance yet. So it's in their budget requests. And of course, those budget numbers are looking like this, of course, for those line items. So that's where we would be if if we had that information 4 days before Mark released his budget, we wouldn't be having this meeting.
Okay, if there's
Well,
no
we
other,
would still be having this meeting because the Board of Education
Yeah.
budget.
Well, that's true. They have to start.
We would still be having this meeting.
They have to start much
if
earlier.
there's no other discussion, I'd like to move forward with a roll call vote on item number 1.
All right, Mr. Bodwin, or what is? Would you like? Would someone?
Bedoin.
Would someone read the motion again? Is there a motion on the
The
table?
motion is to increase the town manager's budget for the 2023-24 requested budget line for general fund MERS pension by $605,000 even.
Who made that motion?
It was made by Mrs. Oni, seconded by Mr. Pocock.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Mr. Bedoin,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoni,
Yes.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
Chairman Leary.
Yes.
6-0.
Okay. The next one, similar motion, is to increase the Board of Education 2023-2024 requested budget by $235,000 even due to MERS pension increase.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Mr. Bedoin,
Yes.
Mr. Morrison,
Yes.
Mrs. Zoni,
Yes.
Mr. Pocock Jr.,
Yes.
Mr. Lebenik,
Yes.
Chairman Leary.
Yes.
6-0.
Okay. We'll have a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Meeting ended at 6:53.
All right, Kevin.